have a very inspiring guest for you guys today. His name is Nafe Latu. He's a Tongan-born entrepreneur, speaker, master celebrity barber. I know Nafe from back in Utah and have just been amazed watching his story. And I honestly did not even know like how touching and cool his story was until he told it to me on the podcast. And I'm excited to share that with you guys. A little overview. After moving to the United States in 2011, he built a thriving career in the barbering industry, founding Fresh Fade Away Barbershops in Utah County in Utah, which he's going to tell you about. And then in this past October 2024, he sold the barbershop to focus on new ventures. He's the co-founder of Beauty University and the Unbroken Community, and he's dedicated to helping others grow personally and professionally. He also co-hosts the Rules Don't Apply show and is known for his community impact, including organizing major relief efforts in Tonga. And his Instagram is at Nafe Latu if you want to find him, and you can also follow the Unbroken Community on there. Wow, this is gonna give you some food for thought. You ready? Such a cool story. I so appreciate Nafe taking the time to come on and share with us. So let's go ahead and get into it. Here is Nafe Latu. Okay, so Nafe, I think you're my first Tongan on the podcast. So yay!
That's a good thing, right? That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a super good thing. And I bring that up because it's kind of where your story starts. I wanted to share just your story in entrepreneurship and mindset and the many things that you've learned and overcome in your life. And how you lived in Tonga and moved here, correct? Or did
Yeah.
you grow
So
up?
yeah,
Go
I was
ahead.
born and raised there. I didn't move here to the US until June 2011.
Okay, 2011, right. Okay. So can you share a little bit about just even that, like what that transition was like for you?
I mean, I remember getting on the plane. I mean, as a young kid growing up back home, this might sound very bad, but every single time we have a plane flying over our house, we have this thought as a kid. It was like, man, like, it would be so crazy if this plane just all of a sudden explode and there's like bunch of candies just fall down from and I mean, because eating candies was like one of those
Mm,
like luxury, like sneakers,
yeah.
like M&Ms, like those were not normal candies back home. And
Wow.
so as a kid, I remember like just dreaming that something will fall from the sky, like all those planes. And I remember stepping into the plane for the first time. We we flew to Fiji because the U.S. embassy it's in Fiji, and when we get there, we have to drive. I think it was probably like 3 hours, and that was the longest drive of my life. I mean,
Wow.
Tonga, it's very small. I mean, you can travel from one end of the island to the other end in within like 45 to an hour,
Wow.
and you
Wow.
cover the
How
whole
old were
entire
you?
island.
How
So
old are
it's
you?
about 17. I think I was like
Wow.
17 at the time.
Oh man.
Yeah, and so I remember like telling my dad, I was like, "Man, like when are we gonna get there?" And he's like, "Oh, wait until you go to the US. It's even longer." And I remember getting to the US and had to drive from California to Utah. I thought I was gonna die. Like it's just so long. And that's when I realizing how very, very small the island was.
Mm,
And I mean, funny story, when we landed in San Francisco, because that's where I live at first before I move out here to Utah. But I remember landing in San Francisco and feeling the breeze like hitting my face. And I look at my dad and I said to him, and I asked him, I was like, man, do they have AC outside? And he's like, no, that's the weather here. I was like, oh my gosh, like this weather, like it just, it felt fresh. I mean, because
mm,
the only time we ever get to experience AC back home in Ireland, if you get in trouble and you got sent to the principal office, only if you're going into the church school, to the LDS church school
wow.
they have over there. And so most
Wow.
people they will actually get in trouble on purpose just to go enjoy the AC. Because it's the
Wow.
only time you get to experience it. Other than that, you're never gonna experience it anywhere else. So, so for me, that's how I felt walking out of the plane. And I said to myself, "Holy crap, they have AC outside as well! Like this is insane."
Wow.
But it was just little things. Like it was just little things like
Yeah.
that. It was already a wow factor for me. I mean,
Yeah.
seeing the difference between airports, like it was just crazy. Seeing McDonald's for the first time in Fiji was a big deal for me. And
Wow.
yeah, it was just little things like that. So yeah, it
Okay,
was a
so tell
really crazy experience.
I can't I can't relate, but on a small, tiny level, I can relate just from going from mainland US to Hawaii, where most people don't have AC. I
Yeah,
didn't have AC for maybe 6 to 8 months, and I had, like, the reverse experience. I was like, "Man, I am just like a pampered little spoiled princess." I'm like, "I can do this. I can acclimate." I'm like, "How are people doing this? It's so freaking hot." 'Cause there's certain times a year it is, like,
yeah,
hotter, and I'm,
yeah,
like, checking the thermostat, it's, like, 89 degrees in my room. I was like, "Dude, I can't do it anymore. I got a
yeah,
little portable thing." So I had, like, the reverse of,
yeah,
like, kind of, like, how do I say this? I have learned since being in Hawaii on certain levels, not as strong as Tonga, but, like, this experience of, like, gratitude that comes in because, like, when I go back to the mainland now, I'm like, "Wow, it's like anything you could ever want and more
yeah,
at your disposal at any moment. Oh, would you like this kind of chips or that kind of chips or this store? Oh, you wanna go have fun? Which fun center would you like?" Like, it feels like this, like,
yeah,
insane
yeah.
land of unbelievable options? It's like, if we want clothes, we have, like, Target, Ross, and TJ Maxx, and, like, a
Yeah, I
couple
mean, I
thrift
actually get to experience what you're experiencing as well. I mean,
Mhm.
having to, I have an event that was speaking at in New Zealand, and having to fly from the US to New Zealand, that was a downgrade for me. It was almost
Mm.
going back. Like, kind of like what you're
Mm.
talking about, going from the mainland to Hawaii. That's literally how I felt going from here to New Zealand. I mean, growing up in Tonga, New Zealand for us, it was a big deal. That's where everything for us, like it was, we painted this picture how New Zealand was, because most of the
Mm.
products, all everything in school, candies and all that stuff, it all come from New Zealand. And so New Zealand for us was always up there. And for me to
Mm.
go from the US to New Zealand, I was like, no, I can't do this. There's no
In
way
terms of
telling me.
luxuries,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Luxuries and all of that, yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's an interesting thing because it definitely, I grew up in that and not having that, it was definitely I realized I was, what's the word? Like, literally spoiled brat is how I felt because, like, I expected things at a certain I expect for all these systems to be operating
Yeah.
efficiently, and then you just get your butt handed to you enough times, and you're just like, "Get over it, dude. It's just not gonna you're not gonna get your way. You're not gonna get what you want, so just freaking learn how to breathe through it and endure frustrating experiences." There you go. Okay, you'll be okay?
Yeah. No,
So, yeah, okay, hold on, I wanna hang on this for a second. First of all, you mentioned, like, the candies and the so I grew up in the US, but I grew up really, really poor, single mom with mental health issues, like, we struggled bad, right?
yeah.
So candies and treats, like, that was a rare luxury for us too, even on the mainland, but it made when you said that, it made me think about, can you describe, like, your food experience in Tonga up to age 17? Like,
Yeah.
what was that like?
Um, well, to be able to add more context into it, I mean, there's a phrase that I resonate with, and I always like tell people this, and like I believe that some people that were raised, for me on my level, was I felt like that was kept alive,
Okay.
and it just it hit on a different level. I mean, I was 8 years old when my mother passed away. My mother passed away. My dad
Sorry.
wasn't around,
Mm,
and I was raised by an 18-year-old sister. She was still in high school when she
wow,
raised us, and
wow.
there's eight of us kids, and I have a little baby sister. She was 3 months old when my mom died,
Oh my
and
goodness.
fast forward like a year and a half later, she moved on with her life. She ended up moving to New Zealand. She got married. Her husband have an
Oh.
opportunity in New Zealand, and opportunity like that, you don't hold back for anything. You have to go. I mean, it's for the better. So she
Mm,
moved out, and we had to find my older brother, and it was the one below that one sister, and he was a drug addict. He's into
wow.
any kind of drugs, alcohol, and so
Mm,
we have to bring him back into the picture. And he was fine until my mother passed away. When my mother passed away, it messed him up.
right.
He left, went homeless for a while, for years,
Mm, mm,
and so when we brought him back, he literally, I mean, that was the environment that I grew up. Our house,
man.
our home, that's where all the drug dealers were at. I remember growing up,
Wow.
and there's like marijuana plant. I learned how to do it, as like 8
Wow.
years old, 8, 9 years old. That was my lifestyle. That's what I was doing.
Wow.
Doing all those things. And then our house was always it was very known in our neighborhood and in our village. That's where people hang out. There was almost like homeless people. They feel very welcome at
Mm.
home. But on top
Wow.
of that, my brother would still ground us. I mean, we still go to church, we still do the basic stuff, and his lifestyle would just happen to be just, just his lifestyle. So growing up like that, I mean, if we're going into food and we like you steal a lot, like growing
Yeah.
up for us in our home, I remember like waking up so early in the morning just to go steal from a neighbor.
Wow.
And that was
Wow.
the only way to be able to do it. I mean, um, on Sunday, that was the only guaranteed day that we'll eat something. From Monday to Saturday, yeah.
Wow.
Like you probably
Wow.
have to find good neighbors and hopefully find some friends that might share some food. And I mean, I have a lot of friends that they grew up in Hawaii and they always talk about, it's like, oh yeah, you know what? We grew up like eating rice. And I was like, that right there, I wish, you know, I
Wow.
wish that I could get rice.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that was it. I mean, that was like the
Mm.
life that I grew up in. On Sunday, that was the only guaranteed day. It's not because we're going to have food, but it's guaranteed that other people are going to have food. And the whole culture is on your way home from church, people invite you to come eat. So I knew that on my way home, someone would invite me, and that's my chance. That's my chance to be able to refuel, and
Wow.
that's it. And that was kind of like the lifestyle as far as food goes. So when my dad came home to get us, he told us about buffet. And the whole picture of buffet, that does not exist. That thing is like, I remember looking at my dad, I was like, you're out of your
Fan
mind.
fantasy
Yeah.
land, like, yeah,
There's
right.
no way. There's literally no way. And he says, like, oh, it's
Wow.
all you can eat ice cream. I was like, you're lucky to eat ice cream once in 5 years. Like,
Wow.
that
Wow.
is not a thing. And so it was not until I moved here. I remember we went to a Chinese buffet in San Francisco, and that was my dad proving a point that it actually is a legit place. And I remember walking in there, and I'm like, I can get whatever I want. I
Wow.
literally can get whatever I want. And
Wow.
I mean, I don't remember how many plates I ate, but it
Right.
was. I felt like that I was punishing the buffet for all those years of not
Ye
eating. And I was just sitting there and I just going hammer,
Bet.
plate after plate after plate. And it
Wow.
was one of those greatest day of my life sitting there. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
I
this is
bet.
crazy, you know?
Wow.
So yeah,
Okay.
that was the lifestyle. Like, and when it come down to
Dang.
like, like with food growing up. And
Yeah.
I mean, there was nothing was guaranteed. You have
Wow.
to really figure it out.
Right. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, as it wasn't that was so much more powerful, though I was expecting like, "Oh, well, we, like, ate a typical Tongan cuisine." You're like, "No, dude, let me
Yeah.
tell you something here."
Yeah.
Wow, okay, so you're 17, so then you live in San Francisco for a little while, right?
Yeah,
And then you moved south.
so that when we came here, I mean, so I share there's 8 of us. So the two oldest already moved here to the state. They both got married, moved here on a fiance visa. So they're already grounded here, grow a family together. The sister that raised us, she's now living in Australia now. And then the alcoholic brother I told you, he's the only one back home in Ireland. And he couldn't make it here mainly because we were filing out paperwork. So it was him. He was a part of it. There was 5 of us. It was him, me, another older brother, a younger brother, and a younger sister. That we're the only one left back home in Ireland. And so we were filing the paperwork. In order for my brother to be a guardian, he got in trouble with like so many like the laws. Like he was the troublemaker in the family, and so he was pretty. I felt like that he was forced in to marry his wife now
Mm,
in order to claim us as he's
mm,
our legal guardian to get out of, like, I mean, that was the only way to be able to get him out of doing time, and was
wow,
him to be able to claim us. And because he claimed us and he got married, they have to kick him out of the process of the paperwork of
mm,
filing us to get us here. And so they have to file him different. So we got approved, and
mm,
he didn't. He's still
wow,
on the process right now. I think he had them like
mm,
7 or 8 times try to come up to the state. They couldn't let him, mainly because all of us are over here in the state. Um,
wow,
so yeah, that's kind of like where he's at. So when we moved here to the US, me and my older brother, we got split up. Like, what was the 4 of us? So me and my older brother, The oldest brother in the family live in California. He decided to keep us, keep the two older one, and then
Mhm.
send the two youngers to Utah.
Mm.
And I question it. I mean, my whole life living over there in San Francisco, I questioning him, and that was always in the back of my head. It's like, why did you keep us? And I later on like found out the answer. So the brother there, he's in law enforcement. He's a sergeant in Alameda County, and he was like, I felt like he was like very, very hard on us, me and especially
Mm.
oldest. And he said to me, because I remember, I mean, I graduated from school, and I remember having a conversation. I just asked him, I was just out of curiosity, like, why did you keep us? And he said, I look at our dad, and I know that our dad is getting older, and he won't be able to control both of you guys. He won't be able to raise you guys. Like, you guys in an age right now, and he knew with the amount of Polynesian people in here in Utah. He knew if we're gonna come here to Utah, he said he's like, I'm gonna be honest. You're either gonna be dead or you're in jail. It's either one of the two. Because I mean, I
Wow.
was already like in trouble back home. I mean, I was done a
Right.
lot of things I was not proud of, and I was already trouble getting in trouble with the law. So I knew, and I look at him and I was like, you're absolutely right. It was either one of
Wow.
those two things.
Wow.
And but leaving over there, he disciplined us into a way of like surviving the island. And I think that's when the mentality shift started for me
Mm.
because he said my number one rules was in order for you to survive here in this country, you have to live like one. That was the first thing. It's like if you want to make it here in this country, you have to live like one. And
Mm.
so the circle shifted, and I
Mm.
found myself like I wasn't around Polynesian people.
Mm.
And I was the dude in school, and I will still remember it because I came into the US. I think it was like a 1.4 GPA. I graduated 3.8. Um, it was is one of those like proudest moments because I was hanging out with people that they actually do homeworks. Just basic
Right.
stuff, the boring stuff. And
Wow.
that's where I surrounded myself with, and I was so grateful. I mean, I still so grateful that that my brother, that was the first thing he gave me. There wasn't one piece of advice that still stick with me till this day. It was that, and
Wow.
yeah, I'm just always so grateful, and it was so
Mm.
easy for me to be able to learn as I go because I knew I just had to understand the system better. And when I look at life, I was like, man, I feel like that life it's a game, and if I can learn the rules of the game, I can make it. I can do it. And so
Yeah.
that was it.
Mm. I love hearing like the backstory behind this because I mean I knew your general story and I knew it was really impressive what you've been able to create for yourself in your life. I didn't realize the finessed details of the um that survival mindset that you had to have, like,
Yeah,
literally growing up. I think, I've heard from many people who immigrate to the United States, they kinda have this mentality of, like they're not saying this, but this is how it feels energetically, like, "Are you guys blind? Are you
yeah,
idiots? Look how much opportunity you have, and you just sit there? You guys are idiots, like, I'm
yeah,
gonna take this and run with it," It's kinda this mentality of, like, gratitude and
yeah,
seeing, "Whoa, if this is even possible," like, I was busting butt as hard as I could to survive
yeah,
before, but if I take that same tenacity and apply it where there's more opportunity, the sky's the limit,
yeah,
and I'm hearing that with you. So, like, okay, so let's switch into, like, the barber period of your
yeah.
life. How did this come to be? Tell us that story.
Well, I originally went to school for criminal justice. I wanted to follow the
Okay.
same footsteps as my brother, so I went in there and I did criminal justice, and then I moved to Utah. And when I moved to Utah, mainly because I mean, I wanted to grow. Like for me, being there in where I was at, there was no. I felt like there was no room for me to grow.
Mm.
I was given so many great advice, and there was great opportunity there. I learned a lot. There was just no there room for me to actually apply what I needed to learn. So I moved to Utah, and when I moved to Utah and I got married, and it shifted everything. Where I was like, no, like I see what my brother lifestyle is. That guy is a workaholic, and I was like, no, I can't be that. There's gotta be something. And so
Mm.
I ended up like stopped like study criminal justice, and I wanted to get into business. And to be able to go into business, my wife was like, you know what? I've been thinking about you should go to hair school. I was like, why? Why would you send me to hair school? She's like, well, if you go in there, it's a 6 month program, and you get to learn the business side of barbering.
Mm,
And I was like, okay, like, but I was like, no, I don't think I'm gonna do it. Mainly because of the perception. It's us. I
right.
mean, for me, like being Polynesian is like when you look at cutting hair, only female do that. And so
Yeah.
for me, it's like looking at it, I was like, there is no way. I was embarrassed. I was even
Wow.
embarrassed to even tell my dad that I'm going into hair school. You know what I mean? I'm like, nah. Like this is
Right.
like my ego. I did not want it to be like
Wow.
letting people know that I do hair because I believe that hair is just only for women that does it, you know?
Wow.
And it was not until a day because we used to work. I was a case manager. We filed disability claims for older people, and I remember reading people's record and see how messed up they are physically, and they're not able to do things. And here I am filing, for them to get disability, and they got declined. And the system come back is like, oh, you said that you were able to move 4 hours a day, you can work, right? So for me it was like, man, this is not, I don't want to be the messenger that actually deliver, because I'm the one pick up the phone, call them, let them know it's like, hey, social security decline it. And they're mad at me thinking that I'm the one who
Right.
declined them. I was like, no, 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 I'm on your side, right? So because of all those bad experience,
Mm,
that it forced me out of the system, that I was like, you know what, I'm okay, I'm gonna take a chance, I'm gonna give it a shot, and I'm going into hair school. My
wow.
very first day at hair school, I met the guy who owns it, Larry Curtis. He's one of the heavy hitters in the game, and I'm so grateful that I met him. And I remember him walking in, and everybody was like trying to like look busy, and here I am just looking at him, and I was like, I know you own the school, and I just have some questions. I want to know how you build all this. And he gave me
Mm,
the whole story, how the whole layout. And that day stuck because I realizing that
wow.
all of a sudden I wasn't focusing on cutting hair. I was focusing on the business side of thing, and because he showed me the possibility of, like, I was like,
Mm,
you telling me if I play this right, I can have all of this what you're talking about. And he's like, oh yeah, you can be whatever it is. And he painted this picture, and I realizing that I
wow.
I have an opportunity. And so
Mm,
that's what I did. I went into school.
wow.
The talent part of, like, I mean, the physical part of like cutting hair, it all fall right into place. But I was like, in my
Wow.
head, I finesse of like talking to people, right? Like having the repetition of just having a conversation with people. And just I feel like all the pieces just fall right into place. And people ask me all the time. I mean, it's ever since I saw all the shop, and they ask me, it's like, do you miss cutting hair? And my answer is like, no, I don't miss cutting hair. I miss the people, not the cutting hair part of it.
Mm,
And I miss hearing
wow.
other people's story, and I realizing it's like, man, this is actually like really really cool. But that's what got me into cutting hair.
Wow. Okay, so there's so many lessons here. One, I'm hearing how the power of changing your environment for
Yeah,
multiple times here now for you. Changing your environment, the people that you surround yourself with. And now this identity. Okay, so you walk in, you're like, I'm going to hair school. And I totally get it,
yeah,
right? Like I'm
yeah,
thinking Utah County, like cosmetology school.
yeah.
You're like, I'm like on
There's
this
all blonde. I
business.
mean, in my class. I mean, the class that I was in, there was like 29 of us. I was the only barber in there. I was literally the only barber in there. But here's what happened. Here's what happened. Because I told people this. It's like, I think I later on learned. I think Tony Robbins has said it. He said it on one event, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is what I've been like implementing my whole entire life." And he said something like, "It is not a lack of resources that's wrong in your life; it's a lack of being resourceful." So
Mm,
when I went to school, I was the only barber in the class. The rest of them were all female. They were doing different things. They were doing cosmetology. I was only there for barbering. So here's what I did. I turned around and I thought of a friend. And I was like, to be able to keep me here in school, I just need someone to talk to. Like mentally, I was just not prepared for all the things I'm going
wow.
to go through. So I literally turned around, went back and recruited him, and he came to hair school with me.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah, so we
amazing.
garble every single day. He came in and literally talked to the teacher. The teacher figured out he got in like financial aid, and we drove together every single day. And that's what kept me grounded, because I have somebody to talk to when I'm having a bad
Wow.
day at school. I have someone to like even chat it out with, right? And so
Mm,
that's what literally got me locked in school. And I mean, I didn't miss a day. My whole schedule in school was, I got there 8:45 a.m. in the morning, and I stayed there until 10 p.m. at night, pure full
wow.
hours. Mainly just the situation we're in, like with my wife, and people ask me, it's like, why did you full send it? Because I went in and out. I did not mess around. I just went in there and get what I was looking for, and then I got
Mhm.
right out of it, and I blew up the moment that I left. Mainly because I remember because my wife took a job, and the job, it was a solar company, and she went in there as they hired her to be the director of the company, and there were some things that went on in the business that they freezes all the accounts, so there was no money coming in. And my wife, my whole entire time in hair school, my wife did not get paid on those whole entire time. So every single money that we saved leading up to it, that's all we live up for. And so for me,
Wow.
that was a chip on my shoulder that I needed to do it, because I remember my first time experiencing like a eviction notice, like posted on the door, and I had to ask my wife, explain to me what all of this. She explained to me, and we were actually on our way to the front desk, and it was my moment of like asking them if there's an opportunity. If you can just buy me a little bit of time, I can figure this out. And we got there, and she said, "Well, there was actually a lady that stopped by earlier today and paid for you guys' rent." And I found out later it was my mother-in-law. It was my
Oh.
mother-in-law that paid it. So this is, I feel like that this is when I all of a sudden just turned into beast mode, because I still remember, I still remember the day that I asked. I mean, my wife, she's the oldest of 6 kids, and I will never forget the day that I go ask her dad for his blessing, and he just said, like, it has always been my responsibility to take care of my daughter. Now I'm handing it into you, and for me that day I made him a promise, and I says, like, I will take care of her. And so when I ran into that situation, like I was very like hurt by just where I was at. I felt like
Yeah.
that I let him down, and just the
Mhm.
responsibility of taking care like his daughter. And I asked myself, like,
Mhm.
who the heck are you to come take my daughter and you're not taking care of her? And so I remember, I mean, Lyft became a thing. Like Uber has been around, Lyft became a thing. And so I signed up. I texted a friend. I still have the text message. I asked him for $20, and I was like, man, I just need $20. Fill up my car and let me go drive Lyft. And on those, I mean, on that journey, most of the churches, like the LDS is like church parking lot in Salt Lake, it become home for me, because I couldn't make it home. My schedule go from 8:45
Right.
at the time it end at 10. My Lyft app is turning on, and I'm going Lyft, and so many conversations where I have to call my wife at 4 a.m. in the morning. I can't make it home. I cannot do it. Like, I have to sleep here and I have to go to school the very next morning. And that what it was. And
Mhm.
by the time I graduated from school, I did not look back. I just
Mm.
went off. I just
Yeah,
yeah, I
you
just went
did,
off.
and so the resourcefulness you guys are hearing some of the resourcefulness is like, you got that, you're like, "I will freaking
Yeah,
figure this out." So
yeah.
tell them what you mean by you went off, like, where did your journey take you from here?
Um, when I was in school, for some reason things just clicked. Things just click in school. I mean, like, I become like so good at it, getting here in school, that even when I was done, they wanted to delay. They wanted to delay my test, and my port test, because in school, in order for you to be able to get there, you have to complete 1,000 hours, and then you have to like take like a test, and the written test is like harder than medical like freaking test. It's like it asks about the nerves, right? The muscles, all of those things. And those are the things they don't teach it right there at school. You have to read a book to even go in and do that.
Mm,
And but for me is just with my language, the language barrier. I was struggling
mhm,
with it. But for me, like,
mhm,
I can remember things. And so my wife sat me down that night. We like study, and she asked me like bunch of questions, but we're looking for keywords. And these words were, and so that's all I did. I didn't even
mm,
understand what the questions was. I just looked for keywords, and I was like, I remember my
mm,
wife telling me about this word. This word sounds like that word, and that's all
wow.
how I guessed it. I guessed it. And I went in there and I passed by 1%. If I didn't
Wow.
make it, like, I wouldn't even like pass. So I passed that. Went in and took my practical test. Right after that, I went into the school to the barbershop in Orem. That's where I started. And I went in there and I was very frustrated with myself just because I couldn't connect. The language barrier was just very difficult. Where if I ask them how their day goes, they tell me their day and I lost them. I just
Mm,
don't understand everything they say. So I decided I was gonna go take a couple English classes at UVU.
mhm,
and
Mm.
I got let go. I got let go just because I asked for 1 day off. So I got
Oh,
let go
wow.
from that barbershop.
Oh, wow.
And it was like it was man, I still remember texting my wife, telling was like, I just got fired. I mean, I just he sent me a message. He just told me he won't accommodate my schedule, and he just asked me to leave the shop ASAP. I like all these things. I mean, I wasn't mad. Like I was hurt, but I wasn't angry, and
Mm.
mainly because the owner of that shop, I still remember probably like our second day working together. He said something that made me believe in something, and he said to me that I was the best barber he ever met here in Utah, and that stick with me. For some
Mm.
reason, it's like I didn't believe it at first, but it's something that just stuck in my head, and then I was like, you know what, like. He saw something in me, and he's been around the
Mm.
game for a long time. And he told me that I was the best barber in Utah. I was like, all right, then it's time for me to be able to prove it. So I got fired from there. I went straight home, and we have an extra bedrooms, and I turned it into a studio. Went from a studio, outgrew it, went to a different studio, and then from there, just opening up the barbershop. And when I was like doing the barbershop, I would start charging like $25 at a time. I went from 25, get so booked out that I was like a year out in booking. And then I stopped meeting people that were like, hey, like you're so booked out, maybe you should raise up your price. And I was like, I was having a hard time to with it. And then next thing you know, I go from 25, 45, 45 to 100, 100 to 400. So now my price range right now, they're 400 to $800 for like
Wow.
just cutting hair, right? And
Wow.
it was just I mean, I remember getting a call from Chief Keef in LA, and he was here in Salt Lake. I remember like doing his hair, and I got contact from the Broncos, and I remember I did a gig over there for Denver Broncos, and I did a couple for the 49ers, and it's just like, oh my gosh, it's like this is all these opportunities going crazy, and it was
Yeah.
just yeah, and I just didn't look back. For me,
Wow.
yeah, it just I didn't look back. Those opportunity were just constantly like it was just one after the other, and yeah, it was just a crazy time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Tell me this. Like, when you were starting in the hair school
Yeah,
and you met the owner the first day, and you were like, "How did you do this?" Right? Like, I think this is such an important thing in terms
yeah,
of being able to create a new reality for yourself because you went in there with I'm hearing not just like how did he do this, but a belief that you not only could but were going to
yeah,
create a successful business. What do you think? Because, like, I think a lot of people, they get stuck in this energy of, like, they hear that, they hear the guy talk about what he's created, and they get caught up in this smallness of, like, "Well, other people can do that. I'll never be able to figure that out." You came from, like, a pretty
yeah,
hard situation. What do you think it was in you? I don't know if you can identify it, that caused you to be like, "Not only can I do that, I am doing that." Do you have
yeah,
any thoughts on
yeah.
that?
Well, for me, it was like living here in the US was already unrealistic for me. Like every single thing about the US itself, it's like people ask me all the time. It's like, hey man, like what's your dream? I was like, I landed here in America, and I was like, that was it. That was the dream. That's how far I went with my dream. That I did not know that anything going into Walmart, I mean, just the food, opening up the fridge, and there's actually milk in there. I was like, that's beyond the dream that I was like thinking about. I
Wow.
mean, because I have this dream was just to be able to eat. That was the dream. That was the highest of the highest. You cannot go farther than that. And so
Wow.
when I get here, it was like I was already unrealistic. I think anything other than that, I just realizing I was like, man, if you were to tell me that I'm gonna wake up and there's milk and cereal, like what the heck is that? And so I think at that time was like my brain was it was constantly like proving that this is doable. This is actually something that I can do. But for me was during that journey being in school was to be able to finding the right reasoning for it. And I understand that
Mhm.
people actually succeed in life. I don't look at them and I say it's like, oh yeah, I can do the same thing. I want to know what the reason why did they do it. And I
Mm.
needed something to fall back on because I knew that I can I mean yeah I can go through the journey, but I needed something to just fall back on. And just being in a situation where we're at, um I think my whole entire life I believe in like dying my love for other people. And
Mm,
that's how I just thrive. And for me at the time, it was my wife. It was something that I can paint the picture. I remember how she looked like when we are going through the test or trying to teach me something. And I remember like all the sleepless night that I have. So when on my way into doing something, that's what I envisioned. I just envisioned the people that I love the most in my head, and I was like, you know what? I'm
mm,
not letting them down today. Like
mm,
I can fail for myself, but not for these people. Like I
mm,
mean, my wife met me, and all I had to offer was potential, and I cannot let her down. I mean, that's literally, I mean, the
mm,
truth of the matter. That's it.
mm.
Like I remember going into my wife's house, having a conversation with her dad. I did not have a driver license. I did not have a job. I didn't freaking know what career I was gonna be in, and he gave me. It's like, yeah, you're good, and that for me was he saw something in me that I did not see,
Mm,
and that was probably like the potential. And to be able to see the
mm.
life that I built now and having conversation with him, it's like, like he's always one of those person that I want to have a conversation to, because I was like, even having my daughter right now, if someone like me asking me right now to marry my daughter, I would say no, freak no. So I was like, yeah, I just, but I think that was enough for me at the time to be able to build it.
Mhm,
It was enough for
mhm.
me at the time to actually, you know, that I can figure it out. That I can actually
Yeah.
do this. So
I'm hearing like a mantra imprinted in your soul of, "Well, apparently anything's possible."
yeah, yeah,
Apparently. I
yeah,
mean, I didn't even
yeah,
think you could have air conditioning. Oh, you can have air
yeah,
conditioning? Oh, you can have milk and cereal? Oh, you can have whatever you want. Oh, okay, got it.
yeah. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's actually a cool story that kind of like help with that. It's when I went to school, high school, because I had to finish high school here, and the closest high school to us was I wasn't qualified to go in there because I had to enroll in the program of like English as second language, and
Mhm,
so the closest school for me it was about like an hour bike ride from where I live, and so it's just like so far away.
mhm.
But it's funny though because my brother had two vehicles. And I remember I got here watching High School Musical, and everybody roll up in their car. And so for me to go to school here in the U.S., that's it. That's what you do. You roll up in a car, right? So in my head already, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna drive a car. My brother's gonna drive me. I just in my head I was like, that's already is. That's how it's gonna happen. And we went to Walmart, and I saw this mountain bike, and I was obsessed. And it was $100. It was this green bike, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is amazing. And my brother was like, "It's yours. You can have it. Like, just get it. We'll buy it." And oh man, I was like, as a kid, I'm like, "Oh my god, this is crazy." I'm like losing my mind.
Wow.
And I got the bike. It was a Sunday, and I'm starting school on Monday. And he told me he was like, "Hey, let's go on a bike ride." So we were riding a bike. And on a bike ride, he just looked at me and he says like, "I want you to remember where we're going." And I was like, "Okay." So on my way over there, we passed the first light, second light. He says like, "How many lights?" And I was like, "Two. We passed two right now." And we're going through the trail. And he was like, "How many lights?" And I was like, "That's four lights total." And then I'm going through the trail. He was like, "Remember that." We're going through that, and I'm like dying. We're going up and down on the trail, and I'm like having the hardest time going on it. And we exit the trail, and he's like, "Just remember, like how to get here." And I was like, "All right, we're like six lights right now going through the trail. We're turning left." And I was like, "All right, like left, right,
Mhm.
right again, boom." And then I'm looking at the school, and he's like, "Do you remember how to get here?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. I remember how to get here." And I just repeat back how many lights, where the turns are, and how to be able to get here. And he says like, "All right, great. You're starting school tomorrow. You'll be riding your bike." And I was like, "This just felt like a freaking 3 hours, like bike ride over here." And man, I was like, I just remember like, wait, what? Like, am I riding my bike to school? Is he gonna say that I'm, gonna take me to school? But at the same time, um, just the gratitude of having a bike. To have a bike in the island, that's oh man, it's like seeing people like flying private jet. I was like, yeah, our private jet back home was a bike.
Wow.
So for me, it was like, oh, this is awesome. I'm gonna do this.
Wow.
So my 2 years in school, I rode my bike. I wake up early in the morning and I ride my bike, and I end up like going through like seminary, like going through seminary, and then my brother put me through football. So now I have to wake up at
Wow.
3 a.m. in the morning, ride my bike to get in there at 4:30 a.m., do my lifting, go seminary, come back into school. After practice, I get home. So my schedule is I get home at like 10, around 10 p.m., and then I wake up at 3 a.m., and then that's it.
So
That's how it goes.
you're no stranger to busting
Oh no,
busting it.
no, it
That's
wasn't that. But the crazy part was, it's like I tell people this all the time. On those times where you think that I might be late because I'm riding my bike to school, I end up like missing school like once on my junior year, and I probably late twice. And it's not because of my morning stuff. It was I was late because I was playing football during lunchtime. So I was late to my fifth period, right? And
oh
then my
wow.
senior year, I was never late. I was never late.
Wow.
I didn't miss school. I was there.
Wow.
I was very on point with it. But that was
Very
the work ethic that my brother prepped me to. And I didn't
mm,
even know that he was actually prepping me for the rest of my life.
yeah.
And so for me, it's just like just no stranger to like waking up doing all this stuff. I was like, oh, I can do this any
Yeah.
day. I can literally,
Yeah, and with gratitude and joy,
yeah.
that's
And I'm gonna do
amazing.
it with a smile on my face. I'll figure this out.
Yeah. Okay, so and sold your haircut, your
Uh-huh.
barber company just
Yeah,
recently, right? Like
yeah.
this
Just
past
recently, just
October,
October.
and you're shifting more. Well, there's the Unbroken. Was there something else you're doing? You have like some university thing besides the
Yeah.
Unbroken. Tell
So
us what you're up to now.
yeah. So I mean, I got into when I was like opening up my first shop. I was always looking for what's the next thing in the hair industry. And the next thing for me was I wanted to speak, and I didn't even know what I could speak on. I just wanted to like educate somehow. And I remember doing my first class. I did my first class, and I was teaching people how to cut hair. That was what I was teaching. And then grow from there. And I used to own, it was called Hair and Beauty Show. It was one of the biggest hair and beauty show here in Utah, and I sold that company
Mm,
3 years ago.
mm,
I grew it to a place where it was time for me to be able to let go, and I was like, okay, what's the next thing? And I realizing that doing retreats. Retreat was more intimate, and I feel like that I can, if I can like multiply leaders, if I can like create it more of myself, we can change the
right,
world, right? Instead of like
right.
doing events that people don't get to learn from me, and they go in there and network, but I don't have any like emotion,
Yeah.
like I can't even connect like that. And so
Mhm,
that's where I sold that, start that one, and then we built it to where Beauty University right now. And so Beauty University is just more like a high end where I just teach a lot of things about like business, but also like a lot of
mm,
like self like limiting beliefs. I
nice.
started with that, and then yeah, and then I just teach everything about like the business. And the other thing that we add into it was we allow people, clients, to have a voice of voting who are the best of the best here in Utah.
Mm,
And so we started that, and it was actually really cool because the feedback that I didn't even realizing that people ended up finding more clientele because it's people posting about that. So people are just unconsciously is like, hey, go to my hairstylist. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know what I created. But people were like, even if I didn't win, I gained more clients this year than I did in the past
oh,
year. So
that's
it's mainly
awesome.
because of that, right? And
Oh, cool.
so yeah, I started that. I do the Unbroken, and I just launched. It's called a connector agency, and I just have so many connections, and I'm realizing if I'm not gonna tap in, I'm utilizing those connections, I won't be able to have them. And so
Mm,
the whole purpose behind like just connector agency, I mean, I meet a lot of people here that do events, and one of their number one problem is they cannot get special guests, or they don't have access to all those like
right.
high end people, celebrity influencer. But for me, when I was still doing hair, that was my gig. I was around them so many times,
Yeah.
and they were like always very kind, and they was like, tell me if you ever need anything, and so I end up reaching out to like a lot of them, and that's how we come up with
Mm,
the agency, where I just connect people. I mean, if you need like a cool special guest, I have
mm,
access to them. I can bring them to you to your event. So we
nice.
started that, and I got introduced into construction through like one of my business partner, and I mean, I do the Freedom Golf now. That's one of the newest
Mm,
adventures that we do, and so yeah, I just done a lot of like
wow.
things like that. It's always confusing people because they never know what I do, and I was like, that's the purpose. You will never
Yeah.
know what I do.
I'm like, this is how you know, especially the older guys say this a lot. This is how you know a guy has his hand in so many pots he just doesn't really want to get into it. They'll say something like, I'm like, oh, what do you do? Whatever my wife says, or like
Yeah.
some little joke like that. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. I get it. You don't want to get into all of it. In in terms of people listening to the show that might want to connect with you more, what would you recommend that they check out? Unbroken Community. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously
I
we'll
mean,
link up.
yeah, Unbroken Community. That's holding that one. That one is um it means so much to me. Unbroken, and I was actually like in my journey where we met, and
Yeah.
it was through all of that. And for me, I mean, I always have that drive of like always on the go, and I was like, I said to myself, is like, man, like I'm realizing that I wasn't afraid of failing, and the reason why that wasn't a failing, of afraid of like fail, is because I have someone else's to blame. It was always my mom. I mean, I blame my mom for everything. You know, like going
Mhm.
through all the things that I'm going through, and
Mhm.
my thing was always like, man, I wish I had a mom. You know, teach me all those things.
Right.
And I hope that I can her.
Mhm.
And so for me was I told myself that it's okay if nothing works out, it's fine. I have someone else's to blame. It's because of her that I not be able to do it. And for a
Oh,
while, that's where I was at. That's literally where I
totally.
was at. And I got introduced and I met one of my good friend Nixon Tanastaso, and he had one leg, no, like one arm, and we have multiple conversation. And he sat me down. We just have a conversation about it, and then he ended up introducing me to somebody else, and it was my first time going on a retreat. Like, what the freak is like a healing retreat? Like, what is this retreat crap? And I got there, and they said it was to help you make money. And so for me, it was like, oh, bro, like sign me up, I'll go. And I show up,
Right.
and it was for roofers. And there was, I think it was like 32 of us. Where I was the only barber sitting there, and everybody else is owned a roofing company. And
Oh
I
my
remember we
God.
introducing ourselves. I'm like, wait, everybody else is here roofers. Like, what the freak am I doing here? And the guy who hosted, and I was like, why did you even brought me here? And he's like, one of my core beliefs is legacy. And what you're building right now, I mean, I did that whole food drive, the care package we sent back home to Tonga after the volcano eruption, the tsunami
Mhm.
hit, like it put on like four different grades, and I sent it back home, be
Mhm.
able to help the people in there. So he heard something about it because he was on the news, and then he's like, yeah, what are you doing right now? It's you're one of those people that I want to connect with. It's like, okay, cool. So I sit
Mhm.
there and I listen, and he walked me through an exercise where I finally get to have a conversation with my mom, and it was like brutal. It was like a brutal conversation because
Wow.
um I mean I just remember like when my mom passed away, I never have any moment. I didn't have the time to process it.
Right.
Like to be able to feel nothing. None of that was like available at the time.
Mhm.
And so I didn't realize it, like how much I was like holding against my mom. And so I finally have a conversation. And in the conversation, and all of a sudden I'm just like locked in on this belief that I was like, wait a minute. It's like my whole family, my mother was the first entrepreneur in my family. No one else is doing this. I'm the only one that like decided to go this route. Everybody else is going to school, doing all the cool stuff, and here I am. I'm all over the place building all these things, and I was like, maybe the reason why that my mother passed away was actually give me an opportunity to step up, and I truly believe in that. And for me, unbroken, what unbroken means is that through thick and thin, I always find a learning, and that was
Mhm.
the learning. That was the learning or reason that why my mother passed away was actually give me an opportunity to shine, my opportunity to step up, and
Mhm.
um and that's how I come up with Unbroken. And so for me, every single day is whether I'm in a tough situation or a good situation, I believe that I can find a learning. I will always figure out why I'm here, and I'm living in a
Right.
world of maybe. That maybe the reason why I'm stuck here traffic today was to avoid something, I mean, and so I'm just tapping into that. And when a
Mhm.
partnership doesn't work out, I'm tapping into it's like, oh, maybe, like I don't have a question why, but I was like, maybe that's the reason why, and then I
Mhm.
just move on, and I just
Mhm.
move on from there. And that that event led me into meeting like Tony Chow, and going through all those, like, and I'm like very, very grateful and
Mm.
just grateful for all those opportunity. And I mean, right now, I mean, I tell people I'm I'm game. I'm game when it comes down to just pretty much like doing anything. I realized that the worst case scenario for me, it's just normal life for other people. And so if I have to go
Mm.
back work 9 to 5, I mean, I don't know people doing it, So for me, it's just like, no, it's just another stepping stone so I can do this any day.
Wow. Wow, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I'm gonna make you a shirt that says, "Apparently anything's possible."
Yeah.
That's what goes through it. Like, and if you guys aren't watching on video, I mean, you're just, like, smiling the
Yeah.
whole way through and, just, like, I feel like you're just, approaching business and life creation with so much playfulness,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to act like I'm sure there's moments where you're like, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this is a lot."
We actually had a conversation like that today with one of my business partner. We were actually talking. I mean, he asked me, he's like, bro, like, I'm all here stressing about all these things, and here you are. And I told him, I was like, look, I think it's a part of like growing up back home in Ireland. It's like I always like tell people when crap hit the fan, when things doesn't go my way, and when it's like so much pressure, I mean I don't feel pressure. Like I don't even know
Wow.
why, and it's hard when I explain it when people are like, no, like you're not like being or like real with this. I was like, I honestly I just don't. I just don't. If
Wow.
I need to sell tickets, if it's like 2 weeks out and I haven't sold any tickets, I was like, that's when you see that I rise to the occasion. And it's not that
Mm.
I reach out to people about buying tickets out of like desperation. It's like I was like, no, I'm very genuine about it. But for me, it's just like I don't. There's no emotion attached. If you're not gonna be able to make
Wow.
it, you're not gonna be able to make it. But
Hmm.
like I find myself rise to the occasion
Mm.
when things doesn't go the right way when it comes down to business. That's when I shine the most. Because I am
Wow.
like for some reason I'm just very relaxed. I'm chill. I mean
Mm.
I'm having fun with it. I'm literally
Yeah.
having fun with it. And I feel like
Yeah.
that was how it was like growing back up, going back home. It's like what is the
Yes.
stress gonna do to you? It's
Yeah.
for me it was just like that. For me it
Yeah.
was just
I
like
I I
that.
feel like it's a combo of like your stress tolerance is really
Yeah,
high,
yeah,
You're
yeah,
like, I've endured
yeah,
many harder things than just like not being able to sell tickets to this thing.
yeah.
Like this is not like
It's
that
like this is
hard.
not it.
And there is like amongst like a lot of Polynesian people I know. I mean, that's definitely a thing here in Hawaii. And
Yeah,
my ex-husband's Samoan. And so
yeah.
I see it's kind of just this like you don't
It's
gotta
good and it's bad, right?
stress yourself
Because
to damn death
yeah,
over it. Like, yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's literally like one of my greatest gifts, but it's also my greatest downfall, because there's things that I should be worried about that I don't worry about. And my wife calls
Yeah.
me, he's like, hey, like you need to be it's like, okay, yeah, okay.
I'd say
Now bring
living
it back
on
into it. It's like, hey, we're going to lose our house. It's like, oh, okay, that's important, right? And it's just like, yeah, of course we're gonna lose it. But for me at the time, I'm like, nope.
it's it's a
I'm
gift to those around you. You're like the balancing energy on all the like the
yeah,
stress cases.
right? That's it.
Oh man, Nafe, wow, what a journey. We gotta have you back on in like 10 years. I want to see what's next, like in these next adventures. How so cool. And I just have to highlight on top of it, you were learning English as a second language. Like, come on, man. Come on, man.
Yeah, see, now I
At
speak Spanish
17.
too. So now I'm stuck
Hmm?
with three languages. I'm confusing myself every single day.
You
But
what?
I was actually learning Spanish while trying to speak English. So yeah, so I speak the three now, and it's actually
Oh,
pretty cool.
really?
Yeah, yes, it's actually pretty cool.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. Wow. Well, we will link up whatever you want us to link up in the show notes on Broken. We'll social media.
Yeah,
Follow
for sure.
Nafe. He's so inspiring. You're such good vibes. You bring up everybody around you. It's really seen and appreciated.
I
And
appreciate
thank you for so much for sharing, like just straight from your heart, your experiences.
it.
So
Because this is
cool.
my favorite. My favorite. I mean, most of the podcasts they usually send me like prep messages and stuff. I was like, man, if you want me to say what you want me to say, you're probably not gonna get out of it. I'm like unfiltered. You can just tell
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
tell
That's
me if I'm
exactly what
sharing
I
too much.
wanted. I don't like to over prepare for podcasts. I like them to just like be natural. So
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you for
Oh,
being
this is
natural
awesome.
and
No, I
sharing.
appreciate the opportunity and thank you so much for. You always been so kind. I mean, ever since we met that day, it was funny because you were sharing it. And like you're sharing, I was like, man, it's crazy because the moment you start talking, I went back to the table. I still remember where I was sitting. I still remember a question that you asked me, and I was just very short with my question because I was like, dang, I don't want to be here. Like, I don't even
I
know
know
why the freaking we.
I could see it. I
And
was
that
like,
was,
you,
I mean,
how
the
are you
hardest part.
doing over there?
Yeah, I remember sitting there and I was like, man, I don't want to be here and I don't like any of these people that I'm like sitting with right now talking. I was like, but at the same time too, I felt unworthy just sitting there on the table and hearing people what they were talking about. I was like, dang. But then it shift. I'm like, oh, never mind. I'm good.
Yeah. No, yeah, you figured that all out real well.
I was
You're
like,
good.
wait a minute.
Oh man. All right. Thanks so much now for joining me on this episode of the Inside Out Health Podcast. I hope it's been helpful to you in your journey. If you think that it might be helpful to someone you know, please share it with them. Please share on social media. It really helps me grow the show and reach more people with these amazing messages. And if you could be so kind as to rate the show and possibly even leave me a review, that really helps. So much thanks in advance if you do that. And yeah, please subscribe if you want to hear more of this type of content. I have lots of amazing expert guests on the way. All right. Thank you.